Is that any better?
It's completely turned off the audio now.
Okay, what about now?
Nothing.
You're not hearing me now?
No. Yes, it's working now.
It is a slight delay, but apparently it's working now. I'm sorry you haven't been able to hear anything I've been saying, so let me quickly run through what I've gone through so far. I'm checking the saw for level. It's not a straight edge, it's got a bow in the belly in it, and then it becomes straight at the other end.
Mitch, go up again for some reason. You had it's like and it's fixed again, don't worry.
It's fixed, is it? It must be a cable issue. So I'm going to check the tooth line with the thin lath, check for any low teeth, and what I could do is use a straight file, mill file, and level those off to the curve. But what I'm actually going to do, because the low teeth aren't too much lower, I'm just going to address all the high teeth, which is about 85 to 90% of the saw. Just take those down a bit as I sharpen them, and that should bring it close to level. And after a few sharpenings, we should have a perfect level on the saw. I've set the saw, and what we're looking at, none of these are like rip cut teeth. They've all got the tips of the teeth on one side of the saw plate or the other. And we want to turn those tips out in the same direction that they're pointing. So just widening the curve using a saw set. And we'll find that there are two of those points on each of these pairs of three. Two want to go in one direction, the center tooth wants to go in the opposite direction. So I've been through, I've set the teeth. Now I'm going to take the triangular file, saw file. This is as large as I've got. We really want a file that's only going to reach, the teeth are only going to reach about halfway up, so that when we rotate the file to use a new surface, we're not using a slightly dulled surface in the middle of the file surface. I pop that into the tooth line between the two teeth, turn it in the correct direction to meet the slope on the teeth that's already there. And what we'll find here is that we can step down the saw line, jumping a whole set of three teeth at a time to do alternate ones. And I'm going to try and reset this to the correct angle. I'm looking at about 60 degrees to get, and at the moment some of these are looking at about 40. So again, over a period of several sharpenings, we should get those all nicely back to normal. So if I set that a bit lower, it won't make such a racket. It's vibrating quite a bit. Now, immediately find is that right in the gullet of those teeth, I'm cutting more because the angle's much better this time. So we're not splaying the cut by turning the file as much as it had been done in the past. So we're cutting it in the right direction now, right angle. And just to make sure that it's going to cut and be nice and sharp, once I've taken about 5 strokes on this one, I'm then going to just tip the file slightly over to make sure I've covered the whole surface and leave it at that. Then go on to the next one, and I can alternate my direction if I want. And again, just dress those tips so it will be sharp this time. Now, in alternate teeth, you'll find that you've got to do things from different sides to make it easier if you want to be filing the same direction all the time. As long as you just follow the angles that are on the teeth, you'll be absolutely fine. So work your way up and down the saw like that. I would reverse it, although you can step backwards and forwards and work all from one way if you're clever with your angles. You're always filing one direction, so you're always going to end up with a little burr on the one side of the saw rather than the other. So it's much better to do it from both sides so it's nice and even. Once I've done that, I'm going to take the diamond home and just dress the very tip edges of those teeth. So find the right angle again, couple of light strokes, and this just imparts a nice sharp edge on it, and it takes very little time to do it as well. A question about does the precise angle really matter? I'm not a sawsmith. All I know is that when I do these cross cuts at around 60 degrees, I get really good performance out of it. I think most of the things that I've read in the past have said about 60, 65 degrees. If you really want to be go into this in depth, then do some research online. Don't just rely on what I'm saying here. This works really well for me. But there's loads of resources online that you can check with. The other thing is, if you've got a new saw, all you need to do is take your triangular file, pop it in the tooth line, rotate it until it touches your bevels, read off the angle that you've got, and if you want, write it on the saw itself, on the saw plate, and then you'll never get it wrong, because for sure the manufacturer of your saw is going to put the best angle on for performance straight from the shop. So that's always a good tip when you get something new.
Another question here from if I'll see this, if I'll see that. Which saw is that, as it's got the same teeth as my saw?
This is a crosscut saw. That was a question on what saw this is. I did describe that at the beginning when the audio wasn't working properly. This is a crosscut saw. It's for large logs, planks, slabs, that sort of thing. It is purely cross-cut. You won't get very far ripping with this. Is it like a bow saw? Let me grab a bow saw, show you the difference. Of course, it would be hanging up behind other things, wouldn't it? But we shall get there. So this is just a little bow saw, but the blade's generally very much the same. We tend to have, and this is where I forget the names of them, we do have a similar sort of thing in that we've got a number of teeth that look the same, and then we have something different. Trying to think, is that pair I think is called the raker in these. So we have a set of cross-cut teeth. Can you see that well enough? Yeah, a pair of, 4 cross-cut teeth and then a pair of rakers. And again, you'll see that these rakers will work in both directions. So dragging the material out in that direction when we're going that way, and in this direction when we're coming this way. And those rakers on a bow saw are generally set a little bit below the tips of the cross-cut teeth. So there is some difference, but there's also some similarity. I do have a video on sharpening a bow saw. So you can always look that out if you want to know the way I do those. So I've done all I want to do as far as levelling was concerned, in that I'll be doing that over the course of a few sharpenings. I've set the teeth, I've tried to profile them again with the saw file, and I've sharpened them because I've taken that filing to the point where we've got a bright edge right the way across, and you should be able to see the bright edges on the teeth here. So as long as you've got that onto the edges of all the teeth up to the tips, then we know we've done most of the sharpening there. Some of them are pitted and some of them have been damaged slightly, but in about 95% of the case, they're coming up nice and clean right across the face of the tooth. Then we've come in with the diamond hone and just clean those off just a tad more. Yep. Question on the diamond hone. That's simply I believe it's 300 grit diamond file. It's a flat file on one side. It's got a curve on the other side. I'm just using the flat edge. You could use a diamond like credit card style sharpener. It's really just to touch the very edge with the diamond. You could even use, let me think. Let me have a little look. Yeah, you could use a little slipstone. You get one out. You could use a little slipstone as well with some oil on it and just touch the tips. It's not absolutely necessary, I just like it. It doesn't take very long to do, and when I sharpen things, I do like to get them to a nice razor sharp edge. In sawing, it is pretty much recognised, I think, that a file edge will do pretty well. And then the other thing that I would do after all of this is to just run the diamond hone very lightly along the sides of the teeth. Just like that. And that just touches up and takes away the burr that we've left after filing.
I've always been curious as to why diamond saw files.
Trinix asks why, or it's suggested that why aren't there diamond saw files? I think there are diamond needle files for Japanese saws, but I'm not sure about diamond triangular files. So any more questions do we have?
I completely forgot to mention earlier that Z4ZUSD donated €2.29, chipping in for a mic when you could name.
Thank you. A name which Shenix just told me that someone has offered to donate money in for a mic when you couldn't hear me. That's very generous. I do have mics, as you can tell now it's working. I had problems setting things up earlier. I was trying to trial it out again on YouTube, and Google had their massive problems this morning, so that didn't work, and then I was out all afternoon. And well, cut a long story short, I didn't leave myself enough time to set up properly this evening. But hopefully we've got the main points across, if you'll ignore the pun. And we now have a sharp saw, and a few of these tips I've yet to do down this end, and the actual difference just touching them is quite incredible. Rely on your senses. Your fingertips are much better determinants of whether something's sharp than looking at it, to be honest. And if you just lightly touch, you'll feel the difference between blunt teeth and sharp teeth, And you also, if you're doing it lightly, you're not going to cut yourself. But there is a warning on that. Don't slam your hand down on the saw blade because you will cut yourself.
The interesting theory from Lego Man is that if you had the diamond saw file, you should be able to cut hardened teeth.
A Lego Man suggesting that with a diamond saw file you could sharpen hardened teeth. Absolutely you could. And you may well find that some hardened teeth aren't hardened as hard as a regular file, so you can always try that if you want to.
I've heard from some people that the Travis Perkins tenant saws that you can buy, you can sharpen with a regular saw file because they're not hard.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that, Shrenek.
I've heard from someone that the Travis Perkins saws that you can buy, you can sharpen because they're not hardened very much.
Okay, so there was just a... Are you hearing me again now? Can you hear me now?
You have to wait a moment because it's delayed. Yes, you're back, but it's with the interference sound that we had set up. I couldn't really hear you properly.
Is that any better?
It's fine now, thank you.
Okay, super. Sorry, another bit of the setup there. Yeah, saw setting. This saw set is a pretty regular one, which I think most of you will have seen. I've been trying to read on there what it goes up to, but I've got a bit of rust just in that area there. I know it goes up to 12, but I'm thinking there's enough left on that step to maybe get 14. On the very fine teeth, I tend to just use a small screwdriver, just twisting the alternate teeth. Going down to the small end on there, 5, 4, 3, I think it's going down to two teeth per inch. So yes, certainly we can do this saw. I should actually tell you how many teeth per inch this has got. Let's have a quick look. 3, 6, I would say 5 teeth per inch on this saw. In the individual little sets of 3, it's 3 teeth per inch, but over the full saw plate, because we've got the large gullets in there, it works out about 5 TPI. Anything else I can help you with? It doesn't have to be saw related.
Epoxy this, epoxy that, guessed it was 4, so he was quite close.
Yep, very good. It's interesting because you look at this, the teeth look so large. Because epoxy this, epoxy that has said that it guessed about 4 TPI, so yeah, it was a very good guess. The teeth look huge, and then you look at a 10 TPI saw and they look really quite small. The difference is phenomenal in the visual aspect, but when you measure it out, it's not that huge.
Which branded saw files are you using?
What was that, Trenick?
Which brand saw files are you using?
This saw file is just a cheap saw file from, I think this was from Aldi, to be honest.
Didn't know they did saw files. Interesting. Lego Man's asking, how useful is this saw? Is such a saw in furniture for you?
In my furniture making, it's quite useful because I like to go from the raw material right through to the finished object. The steam bent table project that I'm currently on is taking basically, I recovered a log from the woods in a video earlier this year, and I'm using that to make the table. So a saw like this becomes invaluable for that, because it's so much quicker to rip through something rough like that with a big saw like this. And I suppose also in furniture making with a saw like this, if you weren't worried about the quality of finish, you could do all your cross cuts a lot quicker.
You could use it to cut the waste off dovetails.
Cut the waste from dovetails would be a good way, I suppose. Yeah, cut the shoulder joints on tenons. All number of any cross cut job you like with it. The only thing is, if the material you're working with isn't very wide, let me swap back cameras and hopefully the audio will stay with me. You can use this saw to cut anything, cross cut anything, but if you're using material that's very small, you'll see it wants to jump over the teeth rather than be cut. And if you're using material that's very small, it's just going to fall down the gullet. So in that case, you don't want to use it on particularly small material, but something like this, you know, that'll cut on there, no problem. But it's the same with all sawing tasks. Pick something that's appropriate. You really want to have somewhere around the 10 to 12 teeth in the work at one time for regular sawing.
An interesting point Epoxy said earlier about if you were filing hardened teeth, it would skip off the steel.
Yeah, apparently Epoxy said that if you're using a saw file to try and sharpen hardened teeth, that it will skip off the teeth of the saw. It should do if those teeth are significantly harder than the file. If they're close to the file, then it's going to wear the file a bit, or wear the file. If it's harder than the file, it will wear the file a lot, but the file will also wear the tooth a little bit. So it's really a judgment of hardnesses. The softer the tooth, the easier it gets filed. And non-hardened teeth file really quite easily. The file digs in very well indeed.
Show us your favourite saw.
My favourite saw. show you my favourite saw. Now then, that's such a horrible thing to ask. It really is. Most favourite saw that I've purchased recently is this one. Whoops, where are you there? This is a Japanese saw for cutting into the middle of boards. Is it a Azubiki or something like that? I think that's the name, Azubiki. Lovely little saw. I used this in the couch table build to do the sliding dovetails. Sorry? So Shrenik's saying he's never seen a saw like this before. What else did you say?
Where did you purchase a saw like this?
That saw came from, was it Workshop Heaven in the UK, I believe? It was, I'm fairly certain it was in the UK, one of the big, or one of the well-known quality tool suppliers.
So it's either Workshop Heaven or Classic Hand Tools.
I would have thought one of those, yeah. It may have been Axminster. I know they do a range of Japanese saws there. I would certainly find them in Dictum, the German store, Dick Tools, and they ship to the UK. My other favourite saw, little dovetail saw, which is in an Adria. I bought that when I was starting out. That served me very well. But it's also, funnily enough, it's taught me that you can take a really cheap saw, and this was just one that was in a giveaway box, little cheap saw, tuned up and sharpened, will cut dovetails just as well as this. So a couple of quid and quite a lot more than a couple of quid. Other favourite saws, got a Diston 5 per inch rip saw, hand saw. That's lovely to use for doing long rips. And I've got a range of Japanese saws. So I'm not totally set to being either Western or Japanese as far as sawing goes. I'll use whichever I feel like on the day, and quite often swap between push saws and pull saws to do the same tasks. I actually think it's better for your body to be doing that rather than constantly using a push saw. You probably end up with a strain, but if you're doing some push and then some pull, I think it's better.
Lego Man asked, how would you go about flattening the plate on an antique back saw? His is all warped. Well, I'd chip in there and say that Bad Axe Tools actually have a section on their website about doing this. But I'm sure you've got some information to share as well.
So yeah, there's a question about trying to take the warp out of an antique saw. If you're going to be using it, rather than just sticking it on the wall, I would suggest you get it done professionally. I believe the process is simply a case of holding it onto an anvil and tapping it with a hammer, and I've tried it following instructions online, and it certainly helped with the saw that I was trying it on. But I would in no way endorse hammering an antique tool unless you are a specialist in that particular.
Just to check, Mitch, you are referring to the back saw.
Yeah, well, no, actually any saw in that reference. With a back saw you can, or certainly stretch the back, put more tension in it by hitting the back on it. Again, that's something which I wouldn't attempt with an antique saw unless you've tried it out on something cheap first. It's certainly not something that I am proficient at.
Okay, we have another question from Epoxy, which is, what is your most sore fall?
Another question, what is my most used saw? I would probably say my most used saw would be a Japanese pull saw, probably probably a Ryoba actually. In all honesty, yeah, probably a Ryoba. It's a bit of a rough saw. It rips very well and it cross cuts very well. It doesn't leave an especially brilliant finish, but it probably is the one that I use the most because you've got two functions on there and it's very comfortable to use. Let me just show you one of those that I have. So here's one and here's another, and you will actually see there's a difference between these two. Possibly see the difference in the coarseness of cut. One's a slightly finer cut than the other, but it's not a cut that you would just go straight to sanding. You know, you'd have to plane after you've cut with either of these saws. But then cross cut, quick job at the shooting board. Yeah, that is probably my most used type of saw. Thanks, Emma's Woodworks. Yeah, there's another one coming out in the new year as well. I've done a joint for furniture and cabinet making, and yeah, watch out for that one in the future. The current one in furniture and cabinet making is the steam bent table, which is the one where the videos I've just started releasing now on the same thing. You'll find that the videos are very much in the style of an overview of how it was made. Patrons are seeing a little bit more on that, and the article gives you, I think, virtually all the details of how to do it if you want to copy it. There aren't plans for that at the moment because being steam bent, it's always going to be very slightly different, so dimensions are not exact, but I probably will be doing some sort of plan for it, which would give you an idea if any of you wanted to build it. Now I see Shrenix just posted a link there to Bad X Toolworks, who I think have a lot of good articles in there about working with saws and tuning up saws, so thanks Shrenix for that. Can I offer you any other advice on anything? You've been very well-natured this evening after the cock up with the audio at the beginning and with sticking on topic with the questions, although I really don't mind what you ask. I'll stick around until 7 o'clock my time. I know there's a slight lag, but do ask questions up until then if you've got any. And yeah, please like and share the video, the stream. It'd be lovely to get more people in on this. And appreciate all of you that have turned up tonight.
Mitch, are you still taking requests for the next live stream, or have you already got something planned?
Shrenik in my ear has just said, am I still taking requests for what's coming up? I certainly am, and I will welcome any sort of suggestions for the live streams. Bear in mind, the amount of time that I have. I tend to keep them down to between half an hour and an hour at most. I think trying to keep attention for any longer than that is a hard ask. I do know, is Woodwork Learner on this evening? Has anyone seen him in the chat?
I haven't seen Woodwork Learner at all this evening. It's not popped up in the chat.
Woodwork Learner mentioned making a lamp, and I wanted to ask him what sort of lamp he meant. There are so many different types of lamp, and that would certainly be a smallish project that perhaps I could do in a couple of live streams. So I'll try and get in contact with him. But yeah, any ideas? I do have another idea about coming up in the new year, which is not quite sure when in the new year, but I will be building a sash window for the very first time. So parts of that may well be live streamed.
Epoxy has just asked if the screen behind you is going to be full Comico. I assume he's referring to all his Japanese tools hanging from the cabinet behind you.
Is the screen behind me going to be full
Comico.
Kumiko? As in, I don't quite understand the question there.
I'm not sure either.
Am I going to complete the screen maybe across the door as well? That might be the question. I won't be doing that. Those screens don't go to the floor, and so I wouldn't be able to slide one that would be over the door. So as you can see, I've got a door behind me here, which I do use, so I don't want to block it up completely. And the screens here only come up to just below what you can see at the moment, so I can't add an extra screen just to pull across, at least not very easily. So I mentioned earlier, don't touch a saw blade with your hand violently. When I turned around just then I did, so I just got a little cut. Just shows how sharp it is. Oh, and the other thing I didn't mention about if you're sharpening saws, let's go back to this shot. You may not be able to see because it...
He's referring to Kimiko or Kumiko. It's like a type of Japanese design, I think. Kumiko, Epoxy said it, sorry, Lego Man said it's Kumiko.
Yeah, Lego Man, let's talk about Kumiko. Kumiko are the slats. So each of these is called a Kumiko, and you can make up patterns with them. So there's Kumiko patterns, which I have in the top of the screens, and there's just the Kumiko to make the cross-lathed pattern for the whole of the screen. Yeah, what I was saying earlier, you may not notice here that I've got plastic down on the bench. I absolutely abhor getting metal filings in my bench top, so I always put plastic down, and there's plastic through underneath the saw and up the other side of the vise. So I definitely recommend, if you're using your saw bench for any sharpening or any sort of metal work, cover it up with some plastic. Oh, so Woodwork Learner's around. Woodwork Learner, you said a couple of streams ago you might be interested in a lamp project. Would you like to expand on that a little bit and tell us what sort of lamp you might like to see me make? I think it's Andy, isn't it? Andy. Yeah, what sort of lamp was it you were thinking of when you were suggesting ideas for the stream? It's funny, I now get to realise quite how much delay there is in the in what I say, and when you hear it,
It's around 30 seconds. There is quite a delay.
it's interesting. I wonder whether I should start doing this on Zoom instead.
Maybe. I mean, yeah. The only thing is that this is, well, you could then record it, and it could be quite nice to do it that way. You could even do some sessions at the bench if someone requests something, and you could teach them at the bench maybe.
So just an idea popped in my head, thinking about how much delay there is between what I say and when you hear it, and then getting things back on the chat. I'm wondering whether maybe I could do some sessions on Zoom if there's enough interest amongst my viewers. Just let me know. Okay, Andy, so any sort of lamp, just moved the block of wood and added a lamp kit. I'm just... Okie doke. I'll try and come up with an idea for some sort of lamp to do in these streams. I can't promise how quickly that will happen. I do like, if I design something, I like to make sure it's nice before I put it into wood. But yeah, that's definitely a good idea. I like that. Little projects make for excellent streams, I think. Even if it's just 1, 2 or 3 adjacent streams, then yeah, that'd be good.
I know how you could lose some followers, some subscribers, turn a jack plane or a wooden jack plane or a wooden coffin smoother into a lamp.
Good suggestion from Sharpening there over the audio, to turn a wooden plane into a lamp. I like that. I wonder if I could do that. That would really impress some of the people over on Unplugged Woodworking on Facebook.
Please don't.
So okay folks, it's reached 7. I'm going to go and get something to eat. I really appreciate you all turning up this evening. If you didn't catch the whole thing, do catch it on replay. There was a bit of a cock up at the beginning with the microphone, so just skip through until I do actually say something, and hopefully you'll get the gist of what's going on. So thanks for turning up. Any more questions or any more comments, any more suggestions, just pop them in the comments to the replay video, and I shall check that regularly. And don't forget before you go to give thumbs up to this and to share. Thanks folks. Much love.
Thanks, Mitch.
Cheerio.